principles of proper research.
So stop cursing.
I just was going to get out a whopper too. So there's the administrative things that have to occur first. Then, of course, as we talked about a little bit in the webinar, when you're dealing in the community, there's a lot of questions that have to be potentially answered as far as the level of community engagement and what their role is. Is the community going to be investigators themselves? Those issues tend to come up especially around recruitment, because recruitment requires training by an investigator or an investigation team in order to go out and do it properly, at least for us, especially when you're dealing with children, which Nemours focuses in, and families, because a lot of our determinations fall under Subpart D, which is a special population. Um, so those are the types of things we look for initially. Then when we get into looking at the protocols and seeing how things are going to be done, then we can get more detailed information to the investigator and the partners about what's going to be required. Did that help at least give you some initial understanding of the process?
Yeah, I want to ask, so Laura, you're approved.
Yes.
Okay. Hi.
Hi,
Um,
Stephen Scott, am I supposed to be here? I think?
yeah, you're with Claudine's group?
Yeah.
Oh, great, come on in.
Sorry, I was upstairs.
Let me,
Lee, you forgot the breadcrumbs.
so, well, actually, so, now I'm sort of flummoxed, but, I will step aside and talk with you for 1 second so you feel like, folded and oriented in here. But let me just ask my question so that this kind of, so Laura, you're already IRB approved.
Yes.
And I guess my two questions are, how did you know, how did you know to do the IAA ahead of time? And what, if anything, how did you facilitate, or how did Bob facilitate getting your community people, what was that experience like? Because that's something I've heard a lot of people kind of, get really tripped over, is getting that initial city training.
So, well, I think that looking at like the program, IRB was due on September 15th. So I feel like this is kind of happening after I had to have that done by. So the short answer is I did not know that I needed any of those things. But of course, Bobby told me that I needed those things, and I got them, and so that's how that worked for me. And I think that Dr. Sharif was really helpful, because she was like, hey, you have to get the IRB done, and part of that's going to have require Kathy to do city training, and she also helped me think through what the population was, and so our population is not children, it's clinicians and parents, which changed how we would write the informed consent and the IRB procedure. But with the IAA and the IIA, we did not know until you let me know that. So then we went back to Kathy, and she talked with the executive directors at Delaware Guidance. So that kind of came out on the back end. Mostly because we were told by NIH needed IRB approval by September 15th. So I scrambled to do that before all of this came out. Yeah.
The interesting thing for me with you working through it is that you at least knew who initially your partner was going to be.
Yes.
And the relationship, which was really great. It made our lives easier. And then when we delved deeper and you said there might be additional relationships, that will require amendments later. But at least we could kick it off and get everything worked out as far as we could go in advance. So then later the amendments can hopefully come more easily, because now you have a clear understanding of the process moving forward. I hope that was.
No, absolutely. And I think that makes sense, because when I was talking with Kathy, that probably her or myself are not going to be present at every group to consent the families. And so we had talked about having, we need 3 therapists per group, but rather than have 12 people at Delaware Guidance or from the community do the city training, we'll have like a team lead. So we only need 3 people, and so they can agree that that's the role that they want to play in the project. And so that one person then,
right.
So we'll need to add 3 to the IRB eventually.
And they will need to go through the same process if they work for Delaware guidance, so they're going to need to do an IIA, and they're going to need to do the city training and the consent training
Yep.
for New Orleans.
Yeah.
And then it's just amending your already existing approved protocol.
Yes, and so that was nice about working with Dr. Shirley, because she was able to say, okay, we just have to get this in so we can get it to NIH, and we can come back and make amendments if we needed to. But we know that we need to have that identified and done before any of those people were to be involved in consent or in the research part. The other sort of complicated part is that those same individuals that work at Delaware Guidance are also going to be subjects in the study, because we're measuring clinician perspectives. So the same people that are going to be doing the research, training, consenting other people are also going to be participants. But when that occurs in November, both, again, myself and Kathy are trained, so we have until January to have the other identified people trained before the families would start coming in. I don't know if you missed that. Heather and I was saying, asking, like, how did I know to do this? The easy answer was I did not, because I feel like this is coming after the IRB was due. Like, I knew the IRB was due September 15th, so I had to do all of that before. And Dr. Shriek was very helpful because she knows the process, but it was Bob that told me he knew that the IAA and the IIA. And it was like a scramble of like, Kathy, can you please get this in today, because we knew we had to get it in for the approval.
Okay. And Kathy, how did you find the city training?
It was fine. I wasn't expecting it, and it was, you know, I mean, once I got started with it, it was pretty easy to run through. It was just finding the time. And I was concerned if we had to find staff and they all had to do the whole thing, it would be a challenge for that time commitment. But I think we're fine with 3 people willing to do that.
And that was what we had just discussed afterwards. It's just nice that when we have our meetings, Kathy was like, well, I mean, it's a burden to have to do for the community. But I think that we felt like you would be able to find 3 people that would be able to commit to doing that versus the 12. And so that seemed to be a good middle ground would work for you guys.
So Jerry, same kind of questions to you. Are there changes afoot we should be thinking about, and hints on, is it the same process at Christiana in terms of getting our community members?
Let me first, before I have a disclosure to make. With respect to the city program, I actually am one of the original founders of that program back in 2001, and I continue to serve on the executive advisory board for the city program. And I can tell you that we are in the process. There is a set of modules that is a course curriculum. The way the city program is structured, I'm going to call it a Chinese menu. There's almost 300 different modules available, and each institution selects the modules that they would like to have for their particular training. If you're a social behavioral university, there's no sense in you having to do all this FDA-regulated research training or whatever. We are in the process of putting together a specific set of modules or suggested modules for community-based participatory research, because the way that the program is structured now, you're going to be crossing into things that you could have an appreciation of it, but you really don't need to know. So that'll cut that training down dramatically. So I think the last board meeting we had in August in Miami, in August, I love it, we talked about perhaps by December having those modules available to all the member institutions, and it would be at no additional charge to the institutions. The way the pricing structure is, it's a flat fee, whether you have one person do it or 5,000 people from one university or one hospital. So it's pretty much a bargain when it comes to that. So we are putting together one of these modules that probably, now that we're getting more involved with these kind of grants, make available, and then probably Bob and myself and Maria. One of the things that's really been good is the fact that we're readily accessible. Pick up the phone, we're there. We can walk you through the process. And in terms of executing the IAAs and all those other, alphabet soup things, Bob and I have been able to turn around in Maria one of those agreements in 10 minutes. We can get everything signed electronically. You try to get that done in most other institutions, you could be looking at 3 months by the time these things get signed. So that's one of, I think, the advantages that we have is the ability to be nimble and turn things around within at least our 3 institutions under the Delaware Health Science Agreements. And again, being Delaware, everybody knows everybody. And if everybody doesn't know anybody, then you can just pick the phone up and somebody will tell you who to call. And you get think about it. When you try to call to someplace in another state, an official at the state level, what's the probability you're either going to get through or even get a return call? Slim to none. In Delaware, it's literally same day, or the person actually picks up their own phone. So it actually, the process works very, very well. With respect to the loaded question that Heather posed about are there any changes? The research regulations were originally promulgated in 1991 and have undergone literally 0 changes since they were put together. And in 2011, there was a proposal. It's called an Advance Notice of Proposed Rulemaking. Its abbreviation is ANPRM. And what it was normally they put out a set of proposed changes to, and this really is with any regulation, whether research or whatever, it goes out for public comment for 90 days. Then what happens after 90 days, all the comments come in, it's reviewed by the respective department, in this case it was HHS, who would have to review the comments that come in, and they would then in turn look at those comments. They would actually prepare a report responding to each of the comments, and what they're supposed to do after their 90-day period is put out what's called an NPRM, Notice of Proposed Rulemaking. Well, the ANPRM went out in June of 2011. They received 2,200 comments, and it took them until Labor Day of this year to publish a Notice of Proposed Rulemaking. And these changes that are going to happen within the research regulations are going to completely blow up the regulations as we know them. They've created all kind of new categories, exemptions, requirements. It's an absolute disaster. Well, anyway, the short and the long of it was that there were another 1,100 comments that came out on the NPRM. So we are told,
50% reduction.
yeah, 50% reduction. The thing is, they didn't make any real changes to the original thing to speak of. And so what at least my sources tell me that are really close in OHRP, and I know most of the people down there, they're going to have something out by the end of this month, they claim, with the changes in the regulations. I doubt it. I sincerely doubt it, the way the government moves. We all know that. And I think because of how radical these changes are, it's going to completely disrupt all kind of, not just biomedical research, but social behavioral. And there's some rumors that they're just going to throw the whole thing out and try to restart it again. So I can't tell you exactly which one of these regulations are going to actually take effect. They might piecemeal some of them and try to get some of them in or gradually phase them in. But I think there are going to be there's a lot of opposition. And of course, being an election year, it's not going to be a real easy thing for this to really happen. So all we're telling everybody is stay tuned. Insofar as the agreements and how we do them now, all those are going to change. There's new regulations that just got put out by the National Institutes of Health, in which they are going to require when there's more than one institution involved in a particular research project, that there be one IRB that becomes the IRB of record and is responsible for the review and the oversight, and every other participating institution has to rely on that single IRB. And that's creating havoc all over the places because Bob has different policies in place because of his specific population. We do very little research on pediatrics here because, of course, we don't have that big of a population. Now, we do a tremendous amount of work in neonatology because that's where we're level 3 there. So it really is going to vary all over the place insofar as how things are going to change. But again, the big positive about it is that we're all just one phone call away, and we can each get on the phone and try to hash something out in no time at all. So there are going to be changes. What they are, I honestly don't know at this point. It's just so radical with what's really being proposed.
So the module that you mentioned, that on CBPR, that will be part of the city training, maybe you said in December?
The target date for release is December.
Now, would the idea be that those, so say we have a community partner, that we could just assign that module, and that would, suffice? Are they more, are they aimed a little bit more at the lay person, or no?
They would be, well, first it wouldn't be a single module. It would probably be a development or maybe adding 2 or 3 or 4 of the existing ones that are there to the new module that's there. But the concept is to really abbreviate the training down so it's not that onerous. I've heard people say that it takes them 12 hours to do the training, and I'm not quite sure why it takes 12 hours, but it's still a 3 to 4 hour commitment, and that's a lot of time for people. So what we're trying to do is try to come up with something, or at least the group that's working on it is trying to come up with a set of modules and a suggested curriculum that might take about an hour for people to do. Again, recognizing it's so much more difficult working within the community and the time commitment that's there. So don't hold me to December.
No,
Yeah.
I won't.
But to answer also your question at least from my perspective, it also depends on the role of the particular team member and what they are going to be doing as a member of the research team. So I haven't seen what the offering is going to be. But if you're going to be out there consenting participants, to me that's an increased burden of responsibility when you're dealing with issues like coercion to participate that requires proper training. So even though it might be minimal risk research, CBPR activity that you're engaged in, if you're out there getting people to recruit and you're a community member, if they are offering a separate module for consenting process, I'd want to review it first and make sure we're going to use that and not what we're already using because of the level of comprehensiveness that's currently offered. So it depends.
It's interesting to me, so when you say that, as a researcher, putting that hat on, it seems to me like I would want to contact you in advance of submitting my proposal to really say, what modules do you want my people to do?
If it's not already spelled out in policy, yes.
Okay.
Right now at Nemours, it's spelled out in policy.
Okay. Anybody on the phone with questions or comments?
It's Cindy.
Not for me.
It's I think we're pretty good. Only snag we hit was didn't realize that MUSC they had to have a net ID before they could sign into cities.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know we had a previous ACE awardee from MUSC that had a little trouble getting that ID number, and getting their partner set up. So it sounds like you're at least aware of the problem and working towards that.
Yeah, actually, I submitted them, and they say it takes 72 hours, but we had them within 8. So we're all
Oh,
set up now.
okay, good. So you're
So
doing
this
good.
is Mary Ann. Somehow I got in there without the ID and was able to complete the
I love
training.
the story.
Who knows?
Didn't you hear that part where this is being recorded and you're not supposed to speak?
Take that note, Jerry.
All right. And then I'm gonna hand it back over to Rob and Jerry for any proposal-specific comments that they might have. But again, I want to remind both teams, as you know, that your funding flows from NIH dollars. So this is all the regulatory stuff has to be T's crossed and I's dotted. I always say that wrong. I's dotted. So that we can get you started on time for the release of funds. So, Bob, any
I guess.
things that were done right, or things
Oh no,
that just
everything is
made
done
you think
right.
a little bit, and
Laura got in touch with us right away, and I appreciated that. You know, Laura and I had a brief conversation about the fact that our offices are inundated. So whenever possible, give as much notice as you can. Get it done early so that we can meet your need. We pride ourselves that we deliver for expedited reviews, which usually, as I said, the minimal risk level of these types of research projects is just at its absolute minimum. So they're expeditable under the regulations. We say a 2-week turnaround time, and usually it's under that. I think based on our own data that we get from IRB Net, for us, expedited reviews take 7 days on average. That's on average. It's a bell curve like anything else. So the more complete the submission, the more you make sure that every I is dotted, or die is audited, or T is crossed, the less likely that we have to go back to you in order to get clarification for things that drag down the process of hopefully giving you feedback and or an approval within a specific amount of time. We were lucky. Laura's very thorough. So we made sure everything was done and we had a good interaction going. The other thing is the idea of connecting and being proactive is critical because, as Jerry mentioned, between Maria, Jerry, and I, if there is something going on institutionally across institutions, we can get that done as well very quickly. But if you come at us at the last minute and say, we have to make a special consideration because NIH is demanding something, well, I've got, 2,000 reviews a year that we're doing with potentially myself as a reviewer, one other person in-house, and then volunteers across our Nemours network. And we just can't work, we can't function that way because, trust me when I say that whether it's psychology or whether it's neurology or orthopedics especially, we get requests or demands, is probably a better way to put it, for overnight turnaround time, which we have to categorically deny. So just be proactive because we can't show that level of favoritism as I know because I have a child in a special category that I see those and I want to know what the research is doing. I'm interested. I have a personal stake there, but I have to put that aside to be ethical and demonstrate that we're going to be fair and make sure that everybody's is reviewed in accordance to its submission. So we are assembly line at best.
And I think, Bob, it was good because I have only, I think, done like 1 or 2 other exempt projects. So I have no idea what a timeline is for an IRB or anything else. And so Bob was very appropriately like, whoa, we can't really do this in 24 hours. But and again, I wouldn't have known. I think what was challenging was I need to look back and see when the date was that we got the award and then when it was needed for NIH. Like I'm happy to have, like, to be as proactive as possible and pretty thorough, but I felt like I was not given the time to submit things in an orderly way. And Dr. Shriek was like, well, you could have had things pulled together before you got awarded, the ACE award. But that's just, I mean, with everything else I had to do, that's almost unreasonable. I'm like, I'm not going to sit and work on an IRB if I don't think, like, if it hasn't gotten submitted yet. And so that turnaround, and I don't know if there is a way to do something about that next year. Because again, it ended up working out, and Bob was great, and everything was fantastic. But it was just so short that it made that a burden on the IRB and on us getting things done. So if we had known that there was a way to award ACE awards earlier, or to somehow know that we're going to have to streamline these through the IRB because NIH needs something, that would have been helpful. But it did feel like a scramble, and I didn't feel like it was necessarily because we weren't prepared, but just the timeline of things. Like, I don't think there were 2 weeks, even if I had submitted it the day I got the award. I don't know that it would have been enough time.
It's, and Heather probably could attest to this too. One of the things that we've tried to do, especially if it's a little bit of a more complicated kind of a project, is let's just set up, instead of emailing everybody to death, let's just maybe try to carve out a half an hour and put everybody together in a room. And we actually just did this, 2 weeks ago on a project, and we're able to get questions answered and things done. And then there was the smoking program, what was it, the lung screening, about a year or two ago, where Nicole, Heather, myself, and one of the attorneys was in a room. We met for an hour, and we worked out all the bugs, or at least we think we did, and that at least streamlined the process going in. The problem with the turnaround times, NIH has a global policy that you have 60 days from the time that you have or received the notice of award to get IRB approval. And that went into effect about 10 years ago. What they were doing prior to that is they wanted all proposals approved by the IRB before they went in, but then they realized they're only funding 20%. So IRBs are wasting 80% of their time doing these things. But with each of the different divisions and funding agencies, especially with these particular funds, they're giving you a 2-week turnaround time for a lot of these things to get IRB approval. And if it's something that is expeditable, as Bob says, they've got a great turnaround time. We've got a great turnaround time. It's not that difficult to do if it's expeditable. We got caught in one last year in which it had to go to a full board because of what the interventions were. Now, our boards meet every 2 weeks, and I actually had to call a special emergency board meeting in order to get this protocol reviewed, to get them their approval letter so we can get over to the administrator in order to get submitted to NIH. And that's where I think, as an investigator, you guys are sort of caught in the middle with some of this stuff. And that's when we get caught in the middle, when we see, congratulations, you've got your award, we need your IRB approval letter, and 15, I think it was 15 calendar days. It wasn't even working days. I mean, it was just something unrealistic. But for the most part, a lot of these programs are expeditables and can turn around. There are a lot of other hospitals or a lot of other programs whose IRBs aren't that nimble in terms of turning things around. And in fact, national statistics will show you that the average turnaround time for an expedited review of a protocol in large academic centers is somewhere between 45 to 60 working days. It's astounding. I don't know how.
Hey,
it takes that long.
This is Cindy. I just wanted to say, if I have to go to full board because it's children and they're cognitively impaired, so I always have the full board.
Mhm.
If I hadn't had the IRB in place, I think I would have been in real trouble. By just having to do an amendment to add on HMS school, that's already been approved. But if I'd had to start from scratch, it really would have been super tough.
That's a good point too.
It puts a lot of pressure on everybody involved. And I know we've tried to at least make some kind of recommendation that they consider expansion of that timeline to be realistic. 15 days is just not realistic in a lot of cases, depending upon what your resources are. Now, I'm fortunate. I've got a significant, well, not significant, but I have a good set of resources in my department. And if we got to kick something out really quick, we've actually been able to kick stuff out in 4 hours if we've had to. But if you don't have that kind of staffing and you don't have the dedicated group of people, it can be really, really difficult.
I also think it limits then the pool of who you can give an ACE award to. Like if I had known that, luckily enough, Dr. Schiff was able to say, well, we can do clinicians and parents. But if we had wanted to measure something in the kids, I think we would have been stumped. There wouldn't have been a way to do that because that wouldn't have been expedited if we had done anything with the children. And so I think in some ways we kind of lucked out on that. But I think if you're thinking about next year and what kind of proposals we can fund, if you have to think, I just think it's going to limit what can be done if you're going to deal with a vulnerable population. Just something to think about. That's the kind of turnaround we're requesting.
My advice would be if you have something that you think, and probably you might want to discuss it with Bob or whomever, that is going to require a full board, I would go ahead and submit it to the full board even before you submit it into NIH. I mean, the worst it can do is, I'm not going to say waste our time, but at least you'll have that in place as opposed to everybody. When you got to scramble to pull together the appropriate composition of a board meeting according to federal regs, it gets really tough. Clinicians have got workloads. You got to get your community members on board, and fortunately, we're still allowed to do, when they changed the regulations, we can do some meetings telephonically, whereas in the past everybody had to be physically present. So we're able to do that, and fortunately now with the internet and we've got a secure web page that people can log into, we can actually conduct the meeting by teleconference. But when it's a full board, it gets a little tricky, and with the teleconferences. But again, if you have something that you think is going to need full board or your proposal, talk it over with Bob, and he'll give you the advice. And it's better to do that work up front than trying to scramble at the back end.
And being someone new to the research world, I just wouldn't have known that. So I think having some transparency in the ACE award before the proposal, if I had been able to go and read that, if I'm trying to do something with kids, I'm going to have to do more legwork ahead of time before I even get the proposal. I think I would have needed to know that as a new researcher going into it. So that just might be something to think about with the ACE program moving forward, is that I wouldn't have known any of that until now. And that would have put me in a really tough spot. And so to be able to explain that to someone as part of the ACE award program, I think would be really useful.
I have to say, I really appreciate the mentorship that you got from Dr. Sharif. I mean, to me, that would have made all the difference in the world as we're on the research side.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. So I think that made a big difference. And also, I don't know.
I just want to say too, I appreciate that feedback. And my first question, I think, is going to be to talk to the people who handle our administration. I don't know if the CTR sets the notice of award date, or if that's we say, okay, you've gotten the award, and then the NIH says,
My understanding is it's an arbitrary set.
That's what I'm thinking.
It's an arbitrary, that is, the awardee is University of Delaware through, I think, Dr. Buchanan's office. Mm-hmm. They are the ones that set the deadline date for IRB approval.
So I think, that's my question, and I think if it comes from us, there's probably some flexibility that we could support people. Just so you know, this is the first year that we had NIH funds. There's different funding sources in the CTR, and we've had state and institutional and other funds to support that, and we've been lucky because there's a lot more flexibility with that. So that question I would ask, and I think The other thing would be to scrutinize a little bit the proposals ahead of time and to pick out any that we think might need full board, and just to reach out to that person and say, it's a possibility, like just looking at what you've written, that this could be a full board requiring proposal. So in advance, knowing, the NIH
Yes.
deadlines, you may want to reach out to the lead of your IRB
We
and talk to them about what, they're
love
going to need
pre-reviews.
from you.
Pre-reviews are the greatest thing in the world. And I know it's not always possible, but for myself or Suzanne Murphy, who's our assistant director, to be able to look something over and advise in advance makes everybody's lives, because you never know where that little bump in the road is going to be. So yeah, if whenever possible, just for your own sanity, because as I said, it's a bell curve. When we get everything right, it's a 7-day turnaround time. If it's full board, our average turnaround time is 14 days. That when it's done properly. We found that when they're not done properly, especially with full board, average turnaround time is 37 days for the mean. And then it extends out. So I've seen things that are 6 months, because we just keep going back and forth with investigators about what their needs are, because they're not being specific enough in the protocols. And for us to determine protections are being met, we need those specifics. So it can really, and that's when I think people get frustrated on both sides. So pre-reviews, big thumbs up to, whenever possible.
Yeah, and like I say, there are some things that are just beyond our control. And I can tell you, working or having to involve anything involving the state of Delaware is a bureaucratic nightmare. Not that I'm sure you all haven't had some experience, but they have their own IRB, which is sort of a fascinating structure in the fact when other states have IRBs, state IRBs, they cover the gamut of all research, irregardless if it's from Health and Human Services, their Department of Justice, everything. In Delaware, the only thing that the IRB reviews in the state are things that come through HHS. That's it. If it has anything to do with prisoners, anything to do with Department of Justice, it winds up on my lap. They don't want to touch it. The problem is that the bureaucracy within the state of Delaware is they have an IRB, meet once a month, but in order for a protocol to get to that IRB, it has to first, if you want to get, for example, Medicaid claims data, it has to go to the head of that division for that person to sign it off. That person, and then in turn, has to get somebody else to sign it off. Then in turn, it finally shows up at the IRB level. You're already talking 2 to 3 months if you're lucky, and then their IRB reviews it. So when it involves state, it can get to be a real difficult thing. And actually, with the Corey grant that with Claudine, we had so many different moving parts with the state and whatever else. It took us literally a year to get these agreements in place with the state signing off on them before we could even proceed. So that's all, when you're doing some of your designs and your studies, these are things that you sort of want to keep in the back of your mind. There's no way, unfortunately, to circumvent the state bureaucracy at this point. We've tried. I've got a good relationship with their chair, my counterpart, but it's still really tricky trying to get around that system. They've got so many other priorities, these people that have to sign off, because, for example, I think the final signatory is Carol Rattay, who has to sign off after the other two division section chiefs have signed off on it, and she's so busy doing all these other things. Again, it could sit on desks for months. So that's something just to keep in the back of your mind if you're proposing that kind of a study involving that kind of a population.
The other thing that I'm thinking of too when we're here, and I think that Bobby made a good point that I think that started from like a clinical need, and then we were like, oh, we can use this research grant to meet this clinical need. So we already had the clinical connection with Delaware Guidance. But as we've been going through, like, like reading the materials and seeing the idea of like a community partnership and really making sure that Kathy and Delaware Guidance can get what they would like from this to be researchers as well. With the timeline turnaround, I feel like I don't want to speak for you, Kathy, but I just like did it all on my own and was like, Kathy, sign this, sign this, sign this, and we didn't have an opportunity to sit down and talk about the IRB or what we need to do, or to divide it up, or for her to participate with me. And whenever you all were talking about the ideas that you sit down and you have like a meeting and you do 30 minutes and you can kind of hammer it out, I think that would have been really useful. For myself as a new researcher, I didn't know all of this. I was putting the pieces together with Dr. Sharif, and so I'm sure that there's a lot of gaps that Kathy still doesn't know about what I did with the IRB, because I just had to get it done so quickly. And so I think that that would be a good opportunity in the future moving forward, that if there was just a plan that everyone sat down and did the IRB together, that would make a lot of sense to me, because that would have given us a chance to talk through some of the decisions that were made that I was making like off the cuff, because we had to do the turnaround. Would you want to be more involved, Kathy, if there was time?
If there was time.
Yeah. Sure.
But one of the things is, I'm familiar with even, the whole concept of IRB. I'm not sure every clinician who's never even thought about research has any idea what this involves and why they're even doing it until they get into the city training and that sort of thing. So it's sort of, I totally understand the need and why this process was happening from some past. I think the agency was thinking of doing some research in the past, and so the whole conversation about IRBs came up. So I am familiar with what that is about, but I'm not sure whether, if it was another clinician who had never even thought about research, they would probably be pretty caught off guard without initial conversation and understanding.
It takes a long time to build the relationships. I'm fortunate in the fact that I've been here, like I said, a long time, and I know a lot of people. And stop up. And the fortunate thing is that I attend probably 20 to 25 research meetings a month, in more on a consultant basis. We have 335 residents and fellows, and most of them have to do research projects as part of their residency or fellowship. And so I'll attend, and they'll have projects discussed, and I'll give some suggestions about maybe tweaking a design here. Just put things in a little bit more of a realistic perspective. If I've got a resident that wants to, it's got this wonderful idea to look at 10,000 charts, which we know is going to take probably more years than they're going to be practicing in their life. We try to make it something realistic. It's answer a question, ask the right question, and figure a way to do it, but let's do it within the resources and the confines that we can do. So that, I think, again, the discussion part is the most critical thing. And again, like I say, if you do it face to face, just think of all those email trails that you can get rid of. I mean, it's just astounding how many emails will follow one simple protocol. I mean, I've got one now. I think I've got 45 emails on this trail, and everybody's copying everybody, or they're forgetting to copy somebody, or they're asking a question that in a face-to-face meeting, we could have just, like I said, especially the last one we had, we wound up determining this project that was going to be done could be actually exempt from IRB review. And so instead of going and doing all this work, putting the applications through and whatever, and consents and whatever, we can tweak it. We have some ability to design the project that it can be exempt from IRB review and having to get consent and so on and so forth. So it's worth that little upfront if you can do it.
Yeah. And I realized
that's the trick.
That there were
Right.
time
This is Mary Ann. Sorry, just to butt in. I was just going to say how last week when we did the mock reviews, how helpful that was to me as a newbie to kind of hear what people were giving feedback on and, to hear the questions that people had and that maybe going forward in the future that might be something that would be helpful to future applicants to kind of view some of those mock reviews of proposals.
Yeah. The interesting thing is that I always keep in mind, and I tease Jerry because when I took the job that I have now in December, one of the first people who was there to help me get acclimated and make sure I was grounded was Jerry. So, Paul was great. Paul Garfinkel, who was my predecessor, was a great mentor, but the first person he connected me with was Jerry. So I appreciate that because he has so much of the background. The one thing that I learned, though, is the core of the work we do is why the IRB exists, is even though investigators are incredibly enthusiastic and 99.9% of the time have the best intentions, my goal is to make sure that the participants are protected. That's my number one priority. And more often than not, that may seem like not just bureaucracy, but a barrier to the enthusiasm of the investigator. But that has to roll off our backs. We are autonomous entities within our hospital systems, and there's a reason for that. We have to function that way in order to make sure that first the patient, the subject, the participant is protected. And it doesn't matter who's putting pressure on us, that's going to be our focus, always. We also want to protect the investigator and protect the institution, but the participant is always number one. So when we look at it and we review it, we see things from a regulatory perspective a little differently than potentially the investigator might. And we have to bring that out, and based on what we see, those changes generally have to be made in order for protocols to move forward. So in order to get it done, you could have, and I love the mock review idea because it'd be interesting for me to get a sort of a perception of what the investigator thinks of what a reviewer sees as they're reviewing a protocol that they may not have considered. So I found that fascinating.
Well, thank you both. That was about the time that we allotted. It's funny, I was just texting you, Nicole. It was like I was doing it and you appeared. So I think what we will probably do is take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to reconvene and work through this. But I didn't specifically tell people bring your workbook next week. On the phone, do any of you guys have this?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Mary
You
Ann.
you, you
Yes,
talk about the toolkit?
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, you got
Yes.
it? Are we ready
Yes.
to open? Okay, so on the phone, you're good. Although
Yep.
we're going to have some technical fun there with the whole breaking out. And how about you guys? Yes, we have one. Okay, perfect. Great.
So Heather,
Yes.
Dr. Jenkins had mentioned that maybe I should set up WebEx for the three of us for the discussion period,
Yes.
which I did.
Oh, great.
So is is that when we need to use it now for the
No.
discussion piece?
Yeah, we're going to be using it next. The way that it works is going to be something like this. When we come back from the break, I have slides that are going to take us through part of the Are We Ready toolkit. It's a very interactive thing. So at periods
Yes.
of time, I'll say, break off and work with your partner. And there might be things that we discuss back together as a group, and there might be things that you're discussing with your partners. When it's sort of a break off and talk to your partner, you guys are supposedly going to be using the WebEx to do that. If it doesn't work, Nicole set up a backup plan, which is just a regular old conference line.
Okay.
Your face does not look like you believe me.
I believe you. I'm just not sure that I have enough IT expertise to manage Blue Jeans and WebEx simultaneously.
I'm with you on
Neither.
that, Cindy.
Me neither. That's why we have the backup conference line, and whatever. We're gonna try it, and then we're gonna all feel very smug about our expertise in remote learning when we're done.
So this is
Even if
Mary.
it doesn't
Can
go
I be
well.
clear? Are we using the WebEx or are we using what Nicole set up? The conference
We
call.
uh, we're yes, we're going to hang out with Blue Jeans and go through these slides, and when they tell us to break out, we're going to jump over to WebEx.
Okay.
So
I have the
on the
email
break,
to set that up.
maybe open another tab and let's try you and I to hook up through WebEx. And Diane, I think there's a call-in number on that link as well.
There is a call-in number. I'm going to stick with that if that's right with you, Cindy.
Five,
No,
five,
that's fine.
5 minutes, you guys, if you want to play around, go ahead. We'll restart in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I want to let these guys get on their way. I really,
Oh,
really
I'll call in.
thank you.
Okay. I'll work on it.
Lee will
Me
get
too.
it worked out. I have faith in Lee.
You know what? I never got a copy of the link to the final video that Bob did.
Oh,
Oh.
don't, it's embarrassing
Okay.
enough.
I wanted to keep that for blackmail.
I know.
I'm going to show it at one of my grand rounds.
As far as I know, you do have to log into the CTR website.
Okay.
It's not like, and some people actually cared about it
Just
not
don't give
being
it to
like
them.
a
Don't
live
give it to
link
them.
that could be like out on YouTube and stuff like that. So it's protected
wants to
behind
use it.
the.
Okay.
He wants to
membership.
use it. Don't give it to him, Heather, please.
But I don't know that you couldn't copy it from there.
I've never done anything like that. I was so embarrassed, so nervous doing it.
It did feel really awkward, but actually I felt like I just did mine for. Once I got going,
Yeah.
No,
it felt okay.
First one or
it's
two
like
I
test
did,
anxiety.
so,
It's
yeah.
like one of those things that just sits in my head as I'm doing it. And then if I get hung up on a slide or a stray thought comes in, you're like pausing and you're like,
And I had reminders dinging on my computer, like telling me like, oh, you should be recording your webinar right now. I'm like, I was like, is that going to be on there?
I made Lee promise to edit sections if I pause too long. Oh, always a pleasure. You know what you gotta do? What?
It was years ago. Just so that I got everybody together, just for a couple of hours. We do it with the ethics committee. We were doing it at least once a year. We have joint meetings between Nemours and our ethics committee, and we just rotate all the places. And we haven't done that in a while. I'm going to bring that up. I'm just wondering if we ought to try to do that. Yeah, I don't know if we ought to. Yeah, see if we can get you down. I know it's going to be probably a
Are you heading back up to Wilmington?
my office is at the Grand campus.
I have no idea where they are.
The other side of campus, all the way.
Here?
Yeah. It's the freestanding cancer clinic. We've been out of Wilmington about 7, 8 years. Well, they had to throw us out because when they constructed the new hospital, my office was right in where they tore stuff down. But no, I've been in every building on this campus, and it's just like it's just.
Neil was kind enough to give me 10 reviews.
I guess fortunately, but like I said, my staff has been able to. I've got 2 people in addition to everything else that they do. We establish service lines, and so they basically will do the pre-reviews on the service lines and ultimately send them.
Is that old
I
one
just
there?
don't understand.
All right.
she had grief when you talked to her.
She's been checking in with me regularly all morning.
Oh, give her grief. And tell her I did show up regardless of the fact she blew us off. She was supposed to be here. She promised me.
I get her grief when Edric did it, was gonna say, her mom.
Yeah.
Heather, what did you want to it was while we were still, it's all fine, but I was afraid that because I didn't specify for people to bring their books, that people maybe didn't have them, but it sounds like everybody does.
Oh, okay.
So,
Well, I have them in my car too.
yeah, and that's why I was like, I know she's brought some down, so worst came to worst. We can take advantage of that.
I'm sorry, you're holding for? You're holding for? Can I help you?
All right, I think I'm good. Yeah, I'm good.
You're good? Okay. I'm just gonna swing these.
Well, I guess I'm good, except now that I think about it, I'm the only one that can see my slides. So they're on here.
That's not on PC Lectern, I think. See if that'll do it.
So, look, this is, I mean, this is pretty cool. We can still see Cindy. We have slides. I'm just so happy when things work. All right, so everybody on the phone ready to get restarted?
Yes, it's Mary Ann. I'm fine.
Okay,
Yes.
great. And Diane?
I,
Okay.
I think we may have lost her in the process, but she may
Okay.
chime in.
Okay. Do you want us to give her a minute, or should we go ahead and move? Should we wait a minute
Yeah,
for
I think she
Diane?
could. I think she could get back in at some point.
Yeah, I think,
I think we may have
we're
lost
good.
her in the process of going to WebEx,
Okay.
but I think
Okay.
she'll come back.
Okay. So sounds like you're saying we can go ahead and restart, and she'll join us when she gets back on?
Yes.
I would think so.
Okay. All right. All right. So all of you have received a copy of the Are We Ready toolkit. And this was created at the Medical University of South Carolina as part of their CTR. And Carolyn Jenkins, who you heard last week, has used it in their Community Engaged Scholars program, and we've been using it here each year and have gotten a lot of good feedback on it. This part of the curriculum always makes me think back to a time when a couple of us were asked at a conference to sort of give some tips to new researchers about, successful, life in research, which I still feel like, well, somebody should be giving me tips. But what I chose to talk about there was relationship management, and I had made that the title of my talk, and it was really well attended. And I've given different talks on different topics, and sometimes really that was the Titanic in terms of reviews, but this one was not. People really liked it. And I realized that there is a learning curve for everyone, and that the crux of the matter in succeeding really in work in general is relationship management, how to function as a team. And community-based participatory research and community-engaged research is specifically, it is team science. So figuring out how to work as a team is crucial. So here we go. So the overview of content here, there's the basic tenets of partnership, the goodness of fit for the partners, what is the capacity of this partnership, what are the operations going to be, and then some summary and implications. And I'm not going to do a lot of talking head. This is sort of me talk a little and then we'll work a little, because like I said, if it had been a lot of talking head, I would have recorded it. So this is the partnership readiness model. The references there, this is the same one on which the book is based, on which Carolyn spoke last week. And a lot of this ties in closely for those of you who are more program, public health, people with logic models. So it really asks about, what are the values and visions of the organization or partnership? What is the capacity that the partnership has in terms of resources, skills, and talents? And then how are they going to operationalize this? And in the end, what is it that everyone envisions as the landing point? So themes that will emerge again and again, both as we work through the toolkit and in your more general work: partnerships, leveraging talents, leveraging commitment, the products and dissemination of your work, education, training, and capacity building. And, interestingly, when people do some of this work and they try to research this work, there are actually people who do, research around network building and capacity building. And, it's interesting to think about how to measure progress and achievement in these areas, because if you've done it over any period of time, you know that sometimes there's hits and miss, there's stops and stutters and starts and restarts. So logic models, as I alluded to before, something you're going to hear about, have some homework about, and hear about even more next week, I believe. But logic models basically talk about what are the inputs and resources for a project or partnership, what are the activities that are going to take place, what are the outputs that you expect from that activity, and then overall, what will be the impact of the things that you choose to do. So we're going to start with shared values, and this is just a cute picture of my two sons they flank the little boys, and then I would adopt them in a heartbeat son, all kind of, big fans of different teams, but finding a mutual love of backyard football. So usually the shared values really circulate around a priority health issue. So one, I guess, yes, this we're going to break off in, and I did not write down the pages, but I'm going to look around page 11 in your book. So you can kind of choose amongst yourselves here, and what I want is for one partner to describe the priority health issue, just like a bullet point. Doesn't even have to be, a full sentence. And then they're going to say that out loud, and we're going to get a response from the other partner if that is indeed how both would describe it. So let's see. All right, so we can do it verbally. So which one, you guys, since it's easier to do it with people looking at me. So which one of you would like to take the stab at describing your priority health issue? I like to put the community partners on the spot sometimes because I think there's a tendency to quietly defer to the academics who are a little bit more likely to, talk. So, Kathy?
Adolescents engaging with their community, being able to integrate into the community at large and develop social skills.
I would agree. I actually like the way you said that, Kathy, about integrating in the community, because I think that would have jumped right. So we're just going to make their symptoms better, but I don't think it actually is the main goal. I think it is really to help them function in the community regardless of their symptom level. So I like the way you said that.
Okay, so then our team on the phone,
I guess it would
Gallagher.
be.
Yeah. Go ahead.
This is Cindy. I think she just dropped.
Okay.
Sorry, but she should be back. But I watched her. I mean, right when she started to talk, she fell apart.
All right. Marianne, can you hear us? Because it
I
looks
don't
like
think so.
looks like Lee has her on his computer. Can you hear her over there?
She is not showing up in participants in Blue Jeans or in WebEx, and she was previously.
Okay.
I think Marianne will be back. I have no doubt. It's just
Okay. Okay.
takes a
Well,
bit.
we'll give her a minute, and I'm going to go back to the team here if you don't mind then.
Okay. No, not at all.
So, Kathy, then I'm curious. In this instance, we have generally been working with community advocates rather than directly with the members of the community that we hope to impact. As best you can, do you think that your community of, autistic children, how would they describe the priority health issue?
They want to have more friends.
Okay. And I'm just curious, I mean, has there been sort of any focus groups or needs assessments? I mean, this is something that they want to. This is a need that you feel strongly that they've recognized.
By the time they're adolescents, they're looking for boyfriend, girlfriend, peers. They're looking to fit in to their high school, and these are kids that are mostly mainstream in schools, but sort of not quite mainstream in their life.
Yeah. Okay.
And I would say, if you think about like a priority health issue, thinking about so obviously, like I think that our main goal is to make the lives of these adolescents better, but like our research is not actually measuring that; it's measuring parent perspectives. But like from a clinician standpoint, them being a community of interest as well, is how can we support clinicians in the community to feel confident in providing a new set of skills that they may not have prior training in, as far as working with kids with autism. And so I think that we thought that with Delaware Guidance came to more assisted, we would like more training in this area. So I think that's how we identified that being a community need amongst the clinicians and not just amongst increasing social skills in the kids, which is a part of it, but how can we support the clinicians to give them knowledge to serve this population?
Okay. Diane, can you hear us? Huh.
It does look like, this is Cindy, it does look like Diane's back. And is there any way we can get a mic to the people answering the questions? Because I can't hear a word they just said.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. Oh, it's okay. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, we may just have you guys come. Maybe we'll just have them come up to the front. Um, all right. So let's see. Cindy, can you hear or see either of your partners?
I cannot hear either, but I see Diane on the phone. But I hear and
Cindy,
see.
is that you?
And oh, I hear her now. Do y'all hear her?
Yeah, I didn't know what happened before. I'm here.
Okay, great. Good.
All right. So Diane, we are going to ask you, as best you can here on the fly, can you out loud for us describe the priority health issue at hand in this proposal?
I think for our population of students here at HMS schools, the ability to understand where some of our developmentally very young children are operating, to then assess that and decide how to intervene, and then how to document that we're actually on the right track and making a difference because they're progressing through stages, is the underlying and the biggest priority for us as we look at this project and our specific needs. Marianne, do you want to jump in on that?
We lost Marianne.
Oh, we lost Marianne?
We lost Marianne. Right when
Okay.
she started to answer that question.
Okay, well, I'm glad I happened to be able to connect again. So, I mean, for us, that's really the ongoing, issue, and being able to have a better handle on that, and to be able to use that not just for our students, but the population across the board. We're part of a larger group of schools who experience the same kinds of questions, and being able to help those children and those families to see progress and to be able to intervene so that progress can continue in very, very subtle ways is essential.
All right. Cindy, do you have anything to add?
No, that pretty much nails it. It's
All
just
right.
trying to evaluate and hopefully guide, intervention strategies, whether they're educational or health related.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I know this is particularly difficult with your target population, but do you think that your perception of the health issue is lined up with their perception of this issue? Like what, from their perspective, do you think is the value or potential impact?
The question for Cindy or for me?
Heather, do you want Diane first or Cindy first?
Let's see. Let's go with Cindy.
Okay.
For 100.
All I can tell you is where I am today. I am having families that really want to be part of my study. I haven't done a ton of recruiting because I'm already somewhat overwhelmed. And of the children that we have done a little bit of previous reliability work with, I always generate just a really basic one-page report about the abilities that the assessment drew out of their children. And I've had numerous families email and say, I didn't know that she enjoyed X so much. So I'm going to really incorporate that into her home life because I want her to be as happy as possible, or I want him to be as happy as possible. So it's all anecdotal, but I really feel like just recruitment has been so easy with very little effort on my part. As long as the problem with this, and it's not a problem, it's just the way it is. These children are so medically complex. It's easier, and it makes much better sense for me to go to them. They're not extremely mobile. Um, it would be impossible for them to come to my clinic or lab 5 days over, 5 times over 10 days. So as long as I'm willing to go to them, I think it has meaning, but I don't really have much more than easy recruitment and positive parent report after I've done the assessments.
Great. So now what I'm going to ask everyone to do is to turn to page 12 in your book, and up at the top, there are 3 questions under the individual assessment, and I want you just to answer those questions.
Hello? Hi, it's Marianne.
Hi, Marianne. Do you happen to have
Something
your book
happened?
with you? Yeah, we missed you. We
Yes,
dropped
I
you.
do.
Sorry.
I lost everything.
Yeah.
I'm restarting now, and all I see on my screen is just a buffering thing. So if we could go back to the other question, so just to reorient myself.
Sure.
We were talking about what I saw the main problem being as to what our project is addressing. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. So I think one of the things that brings this to be such an interesting project for HMS and for me personally is that what we're really looking at is an assessment tool for children who have significant brain injury, and there is not really a lot out there. We spend a lot of our time, I know we talked a little bit about this last week with Carol when she was there, about the fact that most of our assessments tend to be kind of a narrative because there aren't really formalized testing tools that we can use with our children given the low incidence population that they are, the multi-disabled population. So that's kind of where I see that this project is looking at developing a tool that would help to meet the needs of a formalized evaluation for that population, which I think would be really useful in conjunction with the narrative that a clinician might create in an evaluation for a child with those needs.
Okay. And were you able to hear Cindy's most recent response? Because the next question we asked was, okay, so just briefly, the next question
I lost
that we
her too.
Okay, well, we're going to make her say it again. Actually, I found it very, very touching, and it made me think about the project differently. I asked Cindy to comment on if this community could speak for itself. How would this community articulate the health need? And Cindy, you responded very nicely by talking about the enthusiasm of a parent, and I'll be quiet and let you say that again.
Hey, Marianne, Cindy. I was just saying I haven't done a wealth of advertising for recruitment because it's been an easy project to recruit for, and I think that's the reason it's been the easy project to recruit for is because whether we're therapists or teachers or parents, we're kind of desperate to tease out what abilities these children do demonstrate, that just whether it's to help us write goals and move them forward developmentally, or whether it's just to improve quality of life and active participation. So I've had an easy job recruiting as long as I'm able to go to the children because they're not quite as mobile as I am. And that's the reason I would love to get you trained in another place so that there's a couple of people in Delaware. I mean, he's got like 30 kids, and I'm like, I can't do that. But at any rate, and then when I finish an assessment, just in an effort to give back, I usually write a very basic one-page summary of what the assessment told me, and I try to highlight abilities. I mentioned some, limitations or problem areas, but I really try and hit the abilities and what the children enjoy. And I share that with, if I've been in a school setting, I share it with the appropriate person at the school, but I also share it with the family. And I've had emails from families that are like, oh, I didn't realize Susie enjoyed this, so I'm going to incorporate this into, what we do at home with Susie. So in a way, I don't, I've not really asked the community, but because recruitment's been relatively easy and just some of the parent feedback, I think that we have the community's interest and their support.
All right. So if all of you could look on page 12 of the Are We Ready toolkit and answer the top 3 questions under individual assessment.
You want us to actually write
Just, yeah, it's a circle the answer, yep. Unless you're wanting to preserve your books. I know some people don't like to write on their books, but. Now, Cindy, are you guys all audio at this point and no visual with each other?
Well, I'm working on trying to get it back.
Okay.
I'm working and trying to get it back.
Okay.
I'm video with you guys, but I don't see Marianne or Diane. I will say from my end, and I was going to email Nicole after this, the audio that I'm getting from Diane and Marianne on the phone is incredibly better than what I'm getting via WebEx or Blue Jeans.
It is better than I was getting on the other line too.
Okay. Yeah, I'm in the midst of trying to get back on to WebEx and Blue Jean, so I may have to drop out for a minute so I can try and do this.
I hear you better, Marianne, on the phone.
Here.
I mean,
okay.
Yes.
We can probably stay on the phone then. Mm-hmm.
If it works best for you guys to just be on the phone, I can work with audio.
Okay, you can mute us there.
Yeah,
Okay.
we can do whatever. There's nothing incredibly visual going on here that you need to see. And if I just know that you can't see each other's books, then, the exchange just has to be, an audio
Verbal.
exchange, and that's fine. We can work with that.
Right,
Okay.
right. Yep.
So, I guess first on the phone, everybody answer their questions.
I actually have.
Okay.
Yes.
Anybody choosing numbers below 6 on any of those questions?
Not I.
No.
Okay. Diane and Marianne, if you would, just read the number, like question 1, I gave a 8 to. Question 2, just read those out loud, because I want Cindy to hear kind of where you guys are at with that, if you don't mind, please.
No,
Okay.
not at all.
This is Mary Ann. Number 1, I believe the community perceives the addressed health need is a priority for them, and I put a 7 because I think that a lot of our therapists and staff and families are not aware that, we could do something like this for them. Provide this kind of testing tool.
That's interesting. I looked at it more confidently than that. This is Diane. I gave us a 9 because I've been working with several members of our staff and one of our board members who happens to be a pediatric physiatrist on coming up with ways that we can demonstrate outcomes. And the discussions that have come from those infrequent but regular meetings over at least the last 3 years have indicated that we all want to have some better handle to be able to standardize our observations. And even though this is a very small piece of what our school does with a range of students, it's something we could hold on to for those most difficult kids to assess. So I perceive the need as being greater and confident that we're addressing a need that's real.
Okay. And then question 2.
For question 2, I believe our team has a good understanding of what the community's needs and concerns are about the health issue, and I put a 9 for that because I do think that for the years that we've been doing this, I think we have a good idea, and I think our families also do.
Yeah, and I gave it an 8, feeling very much the same way.
All right. And then the third question.
The community's preferences have been and will be incorporated into this project. And I also put a 9 because as we're just getting started, I think we still have some things to flesh out to see how they will be incorporated and how we'll use them as we go forward in the project. But I'm very confident that we'll work out some of those things. And I think that we'll meet some challenges along the way and also see some areas for the way that it would be that the community would be incorporated into the project in which we haven't foreseen yet.
Okay.
So I gave it a 9. Yep.
And I gave it a 9 too, for much the same reason, thinking that, I think that we have established a great foundation of commonality and common understanding and respect for each other's abilities to participate. And there's a great willingness on the part of all of us, I think, to adapt to make it work.
Okay. So it wasn't intended this way, but I feel like, Cindy, you just got a good score at the Olympics. So something like that. All right. So we are going to switch. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say I think it's deserved.
Yes. So we are now going to switch to our other team here, and I've asked them to go ahead and exchange books. I look, and it seems like there was one question where you gave a 6, and I'm curious to hear what your concerns are.
So I think whenever I think of the community, I think the project's unique because we have the community of families with autism. We have the community being.
Can you guys hear her? You can kind of hear. Why don't you?
Do you want me to stand? Yeah. So I was saying that I think that our project is unique because we have the community of families and children affected by autism. Then we also have actually the clinicians at Delaware Guidance are part of the research as well. And so when I was answering the questions, I was thinking less about the kids with autism and more about Delaware Guidance. And I think that both Delaware Guidance and Knowledge is focused on the kids with autism, that I want to make sure that that this is a sustainable project for the clinicians. And I think there have been several times that have come up to think about, do we need to have CEUs, and can we really ask them to do city training, and how do we help you all with billing? And so I think that it has come up, but I think that both of us are putting the families of kids with autism maybe ahead of what the clinicians need. And so that's why I had it as a 6, because moving forward, I want to make sure that this is not just about the families of the academic project, but this is something that Delaware Guidance can actually use and it be meaningful for them. So that's why I had it rated that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything that surprised you about your partner's answers before you sit down?
No, I would assume, Kathy, that you were thinking about the kids with autism, or you were thinking about Delaware Guidance too.
Oh, a mixture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
I think if I was just focusing on the kids, it might have been a little. So
I'll switch with you.
Yeah.
So I rated 7 and 8s for the 3 questions, and if I was just focusing on the kids and the families, for the kids, it would have probably been higher. The families, there's sometimes a mixture of where they want to see their kids and their interest. Some families can be very protective and worry about more integration in the general community.
And even time of day for groups.
Right.
And just making it feasible for the family.
Yeah, that can be challenging. For the clinicians, that's also a mixed bag, because I think that there is a lot of sometimes fear for clinicians who are strictly wanting to do family therapy or individual therapy. They have shied away from working with kids with autism until they do, when they're assigned clients, and then they usually embrace those families and those kids. So that's also a little bit of a mix, but I think that giving them more tools and more education is definitely going to, with Laura doing the training for the staff, that will improve some of that understanding. So
we're moving forward with that. We're trying to make sure that we're getting Delaware guidance what they need to.
Okay. So, and I'll say that personally, I appreciate that distinction that you made, because I think that one of the big barriers to being truly focused on your community or your patient in terms of the outcomes is that typically there's a really big complicated system, clinically between you and them, and the people who are the deliverers of care in the system, those clinicians, aren't nearly as powerful as people think to affect that. So, it's kind of like, well, we do want to know what people want, but we also have, what the actual people who will be impacted want. But it would be futile to not include the deliverers of care because, the system is there. It's, it's the context that we work in. So, okay, so the next thing is the partnership vision. And so again, I'm going to start with the people on the phone, and I'm going to just have you do it orally rather than any writing. So maybe either Diane or Marion could answer the question, beyond this project, beyond the particular ACE project, why are you partnering, and what would the success of that partnership look like over the long term? I know these
Diane,
are tough
do you want to
questions.
take that, or do you want me to?
I can take a first jump, and you can certainly follow up. But one of our school's goals, in addition to providing services to the students who are enrolled here, is really to advocate for our kids. And again, just not our kids, but kids who are similarly situated wherever they may be educated. And so I think we find ourselves in a position of having a wonderful opportunity to do that with this partnership, so that we're not just this little small school in West Philadelphia that's aiming to improve lives of kids like some of our students, but that we're working with another organization so that the benefits of the work that we're doing can be more widely disseminated, carrying a bit more authority coming from a research side and the university. And, of course, then through the funding that understands that this is a vital piece of research that's important to follow through. So I see it as really a longer range, bigger picture of validating what we do and extending what we do and educating the greater public about it.
And I would agree. This is Marianne. So the other thing I think beyond all of that is that while research has already come out of HMS, we've worked with other people. I've been there for 19 years, and this is something that I, feel will sort of bring us to the next level in terms of educating staff and getting people more on board with research and beginning to look at the population that we have there and what we can do that would affect larger change in this population in general. So, this is sort of a first step in getting us involved in more consistent projects, I'm hoping.
So Laura, I'll switch it up and ask you to go first. Why are you partnering, and what would success of this partnership look like?
There is that. So I would love to see in the future there be a two-way referral stream between Delaware Guidance and Nemours, where, and not just for autism, but really a platform for whatever mental health needs that families have, to where we can provide education and support to our partners in the community. But then if there are situations where they feel like they need more support, they can reach out to us as well. And so there's just an open collaboration, and that using peers is really a foundation to make that grow into other areas, other clinical areas.
Ditto. Basically, and I'll say that our executive director, our leadership team, we are looking to the future, and we're looking to integrative health ways to build behavioral health in with physical health, and this is a really good start, and partnership with Nemours is an ideal place for us to be working with.
All right. So I'm going to give you homework, and it's the kind of homework I won't necessarily check on, but I think it's could be very beneficial to your team. One person on the team, write the vision and put it in email to the other members of the team. And just sort of start that dialogue to see, if you could put in writing and articulate, and does everybody, able to land on that same page? Because I really do believe that if you can articulate that, then you can set your point on the horizon that you're all aiming for. So goodness of fit, we talked about shared values. We'll touch on compatible climate, mutual benefit, and commitment. Compatible climate is, people, organizations, and community. We know that they'll have a history mixed of both positive and negative experiences, which will often impact how they approach the next journey, although it will often sort of silently impact these steps. So I'm going to ask all of you to complete the chart on page 21, and in doing so, purposely think about past partnership experiences that you may be bringing along to this partnership, both good and bad.
Okay. Cindy?
Yes.
Okay. Are we muted to everybody else now?
I don't think so. Can you hear me?
Okay.
I would just,
I can hear you.
In your books, I would have every individual just take, 2 minutes and sketch in what you can on that chart on page 21. And then when we come back to discuss, since we're trying to stick with a little more oral here, I'm just going to ask you for reflections as you fill it out. General thoughts and reflections, okay?
Okay.
Yes.
Heather, can you hear me?
Yes. I can hear you.
I can't speak for everyone, but I know Marianne and I have already done this. Like, we thought this was our homework. So
okay, good.
Okay. And I may be wrong, Marianne, but that's my perception.
Okay.
But we're fine to wait. We're cool.
Yeah,
we'll
give it a minute. All right, so I'm going to start with Cindy, Diane, and Marianne. Just any general thoughts that came up when you were completing this chart?
This is Marianne. I think one of the things is that we are fairly, at least Cindy and I are fairly new to each other. We've spent a little bit of time talking on the phone, but we've yet to meet face to face in person. So this is a long distance project, and so it's a good thing and also a challenge for us for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm not. This is Diane. I'm not much more familiar with Cindy, except that the amazing coincidence of having learned first about Cindy's project through my participation in a group of regional schools, that is, Pennsylvania through Massachusetts and some from other places in the country. We were made aware that Cindy's invested in this project, which is something that the organization was taking on as well, and that we individually as a school have been looking at for a long time, as I stated before. So the confluence of all those markers seemed to really align that this was a gift and an opportunity for us that would be a very positive one.
I would also add to that in talking to Cindy, like her experience as a therapist first, and then as also, her experience in academia really sort of hit home with me, because I feel like, she understands what it's like to be on the community side. She understands what it's like to treat, and that's where her passion came through for this project. And so that really sort of struck a chord with me. I mean, the first time we talked, we talked for an hour on the phone. This is after multiple emails going back and forth. And it was a really great experience to hear her passion for this come through and be sort of in the same vein as mine for this population and their needs.
Do you want me to say anything or shut up?
Anything you want to say? Go ahead.
I agree. I think the distance is the problem, but because I really probably was a community or potentially a community partner, I was a therapist, but I also helped found. I dream one day that it will be like HMS, but also founded a school for children with multiple disabilities in South Carolina before, which is really what led me to go back and get my PhD, because we have a way to measure and really kind of help drive goals. So it's like I kind of feel their pain, and that's really why I pursued my PhD and moved into the academic world as much as anything. And it is about the vision of trying to improve the quality of life and participation for this population. As far as I see that as a barrier, I see another extremely large barrier that I'm becoming more and more used to, and I would try and shield HMS, or just the administrative layers at my university. For just like even now, as I sit here on the floor in this conference call, dealing with the gentleman who needs to help me kind of evaluate heart rate variability data and just the microscopic levels of approval so that data is safe and da 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 da. I think that is going to be probably one of my greatest challenges, but I'm really I pretty much can roll with things. I'm getting better at it anyway.
So I would say that starting with with the community, that I think that both Kathy and I are lucky that we have good support from our leadership. That I know her leader Bruce Kelly and my direct boss Jennifer Penley, they have a working relationship to make sure that we are serving the mental health needs in the community, whether it be at Nemours or at Delaware Guidance. So I think that has made a really big difference, because with their support, that lets Kathy and I free up our clinical time to do more. We know that it's been supported, and I think that between Kathy and I, we've had some good communication and mutual respect, so that we I think some good understanding of what the limitations that the other person has from like a time and clinical perspective, that we both have a lot of other responsibilities as well. I think some of the challenges are really just time and almost, I think, just knowledge of what the other providers can offer. I think that this will help bridge some of that knowledge. What can Delaware Guidance do and what can Nemours do, so that we can not duplicate services and get families where they need to go.
Kathy, did you have anything? She's going to say ditto again.
Well, I just jotted down 2 words in the first part. I wrote down communication as a positive and time as a challenge. So, but I will say also, I think the other positive is Laura and I have a similar commitment to this population, and I think that it's all about the kids, and I think that that's in our meetings and conversations that's been real clear.
All right, so organization and environment we touched on a little bit. We both have people and processes all around the work that we do that can help or hinder things. Communication, methods are important, decision making. You need to think about what will you do when you disagree, especially in this circumstance, because we're really talking about almost like a equal co-lead circumstance. And then timelines matter, systems and policies. So in terms of timing, I want you to turn to page 28 and 29 and answer those questions. And Cindy, did you guys already do those?
I'm really having to follow the audio of what the questions are, because I know I've answered them, because I'm scared if I minimize these screens, I'm gonna disappear. So I'm just having to wait till somebody prompts me with the question, and then I can pull it up. But I do have the answers, but I'm just scared to really move on my computer much right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, don't move. I'm curious. I was, because
I
you
have
had said
done them. Yes.
you've done those, and your partners too.
Yes.
Okay.
This is Mary Ann. I have.
All right. Well, so as the other team is answering them, may I ask your team, did you have any answers below 6?
I did not. This is Mary Ann.
And I didn't either. This is Diane.
Can you somebody tell me what that question is? I'm sorry, because I'm scared to go look at it.
I think it's number 28.
I'm gonna read the questions on 28. Considering the other workload and activities that you participate in or are responsible for, how confident are you that this is the right time for you to engage in this project or partnership? Question 2, considering the other activities, events, climate, etc., that currently exist in your organization, how confident are you that this is the right time for your organization to engage and support this partnership? Question 3 is, considering the other activities, climate, events, etc., how confident are you that this is the right time for the community to engage and support this partnership? So it really talks about the timing and workload for you personally, for your organization, and for the community. Question 4 is, considering the commitment by the partners, organizations, and community, how confident are you that this is the right time for the partnership and the proposed project? Question 5, considering the competencies possessed by your partnership and community, how confident are you that this is the right time for the partnership and the project? Boy, when you read these out loud, I feel like I'm just saying the same thing over and over again. All right, I might sing this. I'm going to sing questions.
No, I'm good. I've got the theme. I follow you now. Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. All right. Well, I'm glad you did, because I was going to sing to make it more interesting. We don't want that.
Well, you still can. You can if you'd like.
Considering the other challenges. All right. So it sounds like your team was all above 6.
Yes.
Okay.
I have one answer at 6. But
Okay.
Yes.
Can I ask you what was on your mind with that one?
It was actually number one. I wear a lot of different hats at HMS, and I'm excited to work on this project, so of course I will make it work. And certainly I'm carrying a decreased caseload and have some other things to do, but I'm also a clinical feeding specialist for the school. So, of course, the disadvantage of time is a challenge for sure. And, but I'm confident that as we get into the study and that kind of thing, that my colleagues will help pick up pieces and carry that so I can be freed up. But of course, personally, it's just one of those things. Life is never easy, especially when you're a parent and you have a job and there's a lot of stuff going on. So it really isn't.
Mm-hmm.
It's about my own. It's about it being the right time for me personally. And then I happened to notice that one night I sent Cindy an email quite late at night, and she responded at like 3:20 in the morning. And I said, "Oh my gosh, I was up at that time. We could have just chatted." So, and actually up at that time working on some things for this. So, yeah, time's an issue. But we all seem committed.
Yeah. I
Right.
don't think there's any right time. It's the start of the school year. There are changes. There are changes even after we thought that all the changes were in place, and so that's a bit of a challenge. But I understand it's the way it is, and we want to do it because I don't think waiting or doing it at a different time is any freer. There's always something that comes up, so we make the best of it and go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, true confessions, I don't think I've ever taken anything on that I felt like, oh, I am completely confident that I have the time I need to do this.
Yeah.
And if that were if it were the case about timing, I would not be doing this whole curriculum right now in September, because September is just brutal if you have to.
That's right.
It's like, oh, but it is. We're gonna do fine. Well,
that's right.
We all feel your pain.
So how about you guys here? Any scores that don't line up, don't make sense, concerns?
Time is ditto to what they said. Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's and there are for me personally in this, there's a lot changing with the rest of my job. So, but I'm confident that it won't interfere that much. I'll make it work.
I think that it's a good timing from a community standpoint, whereas like it's a need that you all have identified. We know it's new in the community. I think that there's a lot of support in my organization, so I feel like I should jump at this climate because it might not come again. But like again, for us personally, I mean, as we've all said, taking on anything new is a challenge.
Okay. So I guess we're gonna stop for a moment here and take a vote. Do you guys want to push through? And I am totally fine either way. We can kind of keep going and cover half of the Are We Ready today and put that aside, or we can just plan to get caught up later in the curriculum as as the time permits. Yeah. So.
Marianne, I really have no preference one way or another.
Okay.
I have no preference one way or another.
All right.
I've blocked off till 11:30, so.
Yeah, I feel the same. I'm good either way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You guys okay?
I will always pick more time to do other things, just because that's plenty I can do at the hospital.
Okay.
Today.
Every day. All right.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. So why don't we say we'll aim to be done at 11. We'll keep working on content no later than 11. At that point, we'll stop and take just 5 minutes to wrap up, let you know what to do for next time.
Sounds good.
Can get there. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, all right. On page 31, there is a chart of mutual benefit. Really, really quickly, I'm going to ask you guys to take a look at that. And I'd like some of you to sort of choose your top two benefits. And I think that this is worth doing because I think sometimes we have different, you know, it's just good to know what what that is for your partners. So since you guys on the phone have, I know, looked at this a little bit ahead of time, I'm going to ask you to look at that list and give me your top two or three in terms of, you know, what would be the benefit to you for participating.
Okay, this is Mary Ann. Number one for me was community need. I mean, I share Cindy's vision and really feeling like this is a very necessary thing for our community. And as a therapist, I am sort of clamoring to get something like this available to other therapists so we can begin to look at these kids in a multitude of ways and really provide some good information to other therapists, other agencies, and also our families. So that would be number one for me. Number two was the leadership opportunity because I feel like, you know, I've been ready for this. I've been working for 30 years as a clinician, and I've had research ideas and things I wanted to do. So the training that I'm getting by working on this project with Cindy is invaluable to me and hopefully will lead to also producing research of my own in other areas of interest for me. And then the last thing for me was the networking opportunity to really, and I'd have to say equal with that was also gaining new knowledge. So.
Great.
This is Diane, and I think that community needs one of my three. That we clearly need to have something that will help us better identify and work with and document interventions in progress. But I also see it as a great networking opportunity so that we can be connected to other people who are doing such innovative work and to share our innovations with others so that we can brainstorm outside of ourselves to see where we can go with ideas and things that we've come up with. And all of this matches very much the mission of the school so that both, you know, I want to promote it from both an individual perspective of helping our community of students and families, but also promoting the school's ability to and significant interest in being in the forefront of change.
Great. Cindy?
Definitely community need is probably the biggest picture. I mean, that's really what has driven most of my it's why I went back into my PhD and thus do the research or try to do the research. I would say finding like-minded people has been really nice. And I think definitely Mary Ann and Diane, I feel more connected to, even if I haven't met them, than any of the other facilities I've worked with. But I will say they haven't been bad facilities in the past, but this one just feels like incredibly, almost too perfect. Just like we think alike. And I think in the selfish component, but I still think it deals with the community need. We have, or I have, and I know Diane and I've talked about this. I don't know if Mary Ann, but there is a larger grant that really looks at some more art-based interventions for possibly children that are, you know, complexly disabled, and this work may help feed that work, which I think is just as important and may be able to offer it and help more children. And having Mary Ann be an assessor will be very imperative to that work.
So great. I appreciate that very much. And, you know, I think that this is a good exercise for a lot of reasons. You know, if you are a long-term partnership, then you'll have your ups and downs, and there'll be times when you can, you know, pay and support protected time for people. And there's going to be times when there's not. So it's good to know what are the other values that people are, you know, getting out of this. So are you guys feeling ready? All right.
There were several that I thought were important, and some of them are tied together. I think the community need and the need for additional resources are kind of in the same. I see that sort of in the same priority. And then new knowledge, I think, for the group of clinicians that will be working this project, it'll be new, you know, a good advantage for us, and then the networking with Nemours.
See, this is good though. It's more active than regular.
Yeah, I do. I appreciate it. I would say similarly, like the community need, I think, was the driving factor. And then for me personally and for Nemours, the leadership opportunity, wanting to make sure that we are a center of excellence and expertise in autism in the community. And so this is just another way to make sure that we are able to pursue that goal and be effective in that goal. And then I think the third one would be the idea of needing additional resources. So however we can support and build it in the community better.
Great.
Seems like a good two-way flow. If we're like, okay, we have expertise, and you're like, we need knowledge, then great. We can marry it together.
All right. So capacity and competencies really, you know, I think are self-explanatory. So what I've asked you to do is on page 46 and 47. There's a very long list of capacities and competencies, and I would actually, rather than have you necessarily fill out the whole thing, maybe just look through that list and identify the things that you expect that your partner will do and the things that you expect that you will do. And that means that you can leave some blank. Okay? Does that make sense? So Cindy, this may be a particularly hard one to do remotely.
Yeah.
So
I became brave and I've gone to it. And so far I'm okay. I'm trying. I'm not
Okay.
there yet, but I'm trying.
Yeah.
I've figured, there was no way I could do that.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. So, I guess the main thing in looking through this, and I think what I would have you guys do, Cindy, Diane, and Marion, is at some point, it doesn't have to be now live, but at some point, to let the other team members see what you have written down. Because I think sometimes what's important is you may sort of, in your mind, assign a particular competency, task, duty to one of your partners. And it's good for them to know that because, you know, we don't always realize what people expect of us. So that I would say is something that, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to do just sort of at some point. is to just complete these as best you can and exchange them so that your partners can see what skills, and you can all see, sort of what people think you're going to do. So that if there are any issues of like, gee, they think I'm going to, do the IT skills, and in fact, I'm not good at that, you know that up front. But for today, sort of for the live discussion, I just want to ask your team, having gone through this exercise and at least briefly looking at this list of skills and competencies, are there things that stand out to you, any of you, in terms of leadership or skills that your project needs? As in needs, but maybe doesn't have.
Ooh.
I think that may be challenging at the point that we're at now. Certainly, Cindy's done so much of the legwork up until this point. So I think there are some things to be fleshed out as to who's doing what. But certainly a lot of the research center, just getting the approval and those kinds of things, has already fallen with Cindy and hasn't really, addressed what Diane and I can bring to the project yet.
This is Cindy, and I agree, and I pretty much, maybe I'm incorrect, but I kind of assumed that was going to be on the academic investigator, mainly because there's, I wouldn't even mind Marianne or Diane being involved, especially like at the IRB level, but MUSC IRB was not going to let that happen. So they have all, I have shared all like the IRB protocol with them, just in an effort to be transparent so they know exactly what I have in writing. I think part of even actually our funding for this grant is to begin to train Marianne, and we've had a conversation about, I have 2 trips to Philadelphia, and the first trip is like I'll kind of mentor her, and the second trip is she'll kind of take over. So I think part of our problems are going to get worked out is because they were part of the grant, is to, have Marianne eventually be able to do informed consents and really carry out some of the things that I will do the first time, but she will definitely take on the second time.
I think it seems to me that there's almost as the project moves along, there will be more shared responsibilities than there are at this moment.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think that's kind of the point of, it's to teach her the assessment and give the ability to carry the assessment and help me adapt the assessment and analyze it, but also just to give her some research capacity, whether we ever, do any work together or not. Marianne will have additional skills that help her function more as an independent researcher.
Well, and I would agree that it's certainly part of the grant because a large part of it is the validation of a testing tool, and that means that more than one clinician has to deliver the assessment so that we can have some inter-rater reliability there.
Right.
And did you guys have enough time? All right. So what was my question? Oh, any identified needs?
I'm going to start by data analyses because I feel like it's not my area.
Data analyses, yeah.
That's not my area of strong suit.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there's a lot of support at Nemours and within Excel, so I'm not worried about it, but not something that I would jump into right now.
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect Kathy necessarily to do their part of things. But I know that we'll have the support when we need it.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I would tell you, just a practical thing now, there is on the CTR website a way to submit a formal request for consultation from the Biostats and Epidemiology Corps. I would go ahead and do that because they will assign you a specific biostatistician or epidemiologist to work with. If you put in that you are an ACE awardee, chances are they will, I hope, be smart enough to match you up with one of the people who are going to come and work with us anyway. And so it just begins to form that relationship. All right. So in terms of the next step, I think we're just going to go ahead and skip it. If you want to complete page 50 and the individual assessment at one point and exchange that on 51, it's fine. It really talks about more concrete resources. Communication, I hope that you guys are and will continue to talk about these things. How will you communicate what? And typically with a team, and I didn't realize this, so I'm going to say this out loud. You have to make explicit, like how often are you going to meet? The bigger the grant, the more they want that, but it really matters. So how often are you going to meet and how are you going to meet? Are you going to require a certain number of meetings to be face-to-face? I know, Cindy, that's not really a possibility for your team, but you might want to, say, plan a face-to-face reunion around a particular event, like the annual CTR meeting. Those types of things so that you kind of have that on the books. The other thing, to talk about is, remote access and video conferencing and so forth. But the other is, when are certain forms of communication not okay? And I think, Oh, that was just a noise. This sounds so obvious, but I have to say it because it's something I'm almost passionate about. We all think that everybody knows this because we're grown-ups, but I do think that more and more in the professional world, we need to have a conversation about when is email not okay. I don't personally, know what to do with sometimes when I get really, really long emails with lots of detail. That to me seems like, well, that probably doesn't belong here. And then I try and, with the physicians I'm training and talking about professionalism or, the research assistants and the people that come up, nothing conflictual goes in an email. If you're confused, always better start, pick up the phone. If you're angry, assume that, you probably just misunderstood something. So I think we like our email and to put up a whole bunch of stuff and like, bam, there, I told you, I asked you your opinion, but sometimes that's not okay. So sorry if I seem a little soapboxy. Inclusive membership is something that I would charge you all to think about. And by inclusive, I think that we are all, probably reasonably humble people when it comes to cultural issues. So we're going to think about age, gender, race, and ethnicity, but also keep in mind point of view. There's the patient, there's the caregiver, there's the provider, there's the payer, there's the administrator, there's the system, as well as expertise and experience. And look at that, right at 11 o'clock. Thank you. It's a year old, so I have to get a new one. But boy, it's hard to get them all lined up. But there's my peeps. There's my boys. No, people ask me that a lot. To me, people.
They look the same age. They don't look the same. They
Okay.
look similar in age.
Well, people tell me all the time they think they look the same, actually the little blonde guy in the maroon shirt has the same teacher as his older brother, and she said that she calls him the wrong name all the time, and of course it's your kids, and I look at them and I'm like, they don't look anything alike, but other people are like, no, they look totally alike. But yeah, that's the guy in navy blue is Matthew, and he is 11, so he started middle school this year. And then the next guy down is Joseph, and he's in 4th grade. And then the littlest one there is Luke, and he is 4 years old, so he's in preschool. So those are my dudes. And if you ever need a favor, just start by asking me about my kids. I'll be all warm and gushy, and yes will come out of my mouth. All right, so next week, let me grab my syllabus so that I can make sure I'm not lying. Okay, here we go. So next week we have a few things to do. The Rob Akins from the Mentoring Corps is going to come here, and we've invited the mentors to be part of the meeting. Last year we did that, and we didn't get all the mentors here. If they can't come, we'll roll with it. But we did kind of make it like you have to come, because if we say, well, we'd like you to come, then nobody comes. So the thing that I would ask one of you to do, and you can divide and conquer a little bit on the homework, on the CTR website is a red cap form, so like a web-based form called the Individual Development Plan, the link to which is on the syllabus. If you could complete that, ideally by Tuesday at noon, and when you hit submit, it'll go to Rob Akins and his mentoring people, and they can take a look at it so that they can give you some feedback about the mentoring plan. There is a mentoring in community engaged research webinar on site. It was the one that we required people to watch to apply. So if you watched it for the application like you should have, then you don't have that homework. But if you haven't, it's there. There is also a webinar on program evaluation science. So this is where you're going to hear a little bit more about logic models, about the RE-AIM model if you've never heard of it. And these are sort of the evidence-based ways to evaluate programs. And then we have, do we have a worksheet for logic models? Yes. Okay. We're going to send out, there is, basically if you look at pages 49 and 74 of the Are We Ready toolkit, it really gets you ready to draft a logic model. And then we have a worksheet we're going to hand out, because to me, like, I kind of like remember learning about this in my public health program, and it was like a lot of talk until I saw the worksheet, and then I was like, oh yeah, okay, I got it, I'm on it. And it's on the website too, Nicole tells me. Okay, so basically, one of you complete the individual development plan. One of you can decide, do a draft of a logic model. Both of you watch the webinars. Hopefully you only have the one from Dr. Carpin, because the other one would have been the one you watched in applying, but it's up there if you want to watch it again. And next week we will be doing the mentoring and the program evaluation science. So that all fits in well together, makes sense. Just so you guys know, it doesn't affect you in any way, but Dr. Jerkovic's, her PCORI team, is not going to join us this year. They kind of felt like they needed a little more time to come get up and running as a team, and they have a 2-year grant. So they felt like it made more sense to sort of midway do the formal education. So they're going to join next year's rounds. However, you still will get to meet and network with them at the last session on October 20th. And you'll actually hear all about what they're doing, which is pretty cool stuff. PCORI in general is a pretty cool thing to think about and hear about when you do this type of work. Questions?
Yeah. Next week is going to be difficult for me to be here in person. I can probably call in. So can our mentors call in as well? Like, I don't want Dr. Sharif and Brian to show up. And I mean, I'll let them know that I'm not going to be here. I don't know, Kathy, if you're planning to be here next week or. So I'll just let them know. Can our mentors call?
Yes.
Would it be okay, Kathy, if you were here with Brian, Dr. Sharif, and I just called in?
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to make sure that would be okay.
I guess I'm just looking at Nicole and you guys too. If everybody's calling in, we may want to think about that, right? Because if you're calling in, they're remote.
That's why I wanted to let you know.
You would be, Kathy would be the only live person in attendance.
And then our mentors.
Right, but you're saying that they might not be live. I mean, right? They would, which maybe makes sense.
I think they're planning to come live, but they don't know that I have. I just think I have to be at the hospital. It's going to be hard for me to not be there.
Mm-hmm.
Things that are happening next week. So I need to let them know that. So I just wonder if they had the option to call in, it might be easier on them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's why I wanted to let you know. I think she and Brian are planning to come. They do not know that I cannot come in person.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
need to let them know. That's why I wanted to ask you and just to see what the format was going to be.
Yeah. Well, I'm sort of thinking on my feet here. I guess my preference would, I'm always flexible because look, if, I couldn't call into some meetings some days, I don't know what I would do. My preference would be to have them live because I think it's for, the feedback that Rob could do, having looked at those plans, is as meaningful to your mentors as it is to the mentee. And I think one of the interesting challenges that we haven't quite figured out is really we look to the, we almost have to develop a different mentoring model, right? Because it's less about mentoring an individual in this case than it is about mentoring a team. So in some ways, maybe, the fact that you're just a voice on the phone lets us focus a little bit more on Kathy, the community partnership, and so forth. So I think we'll just keep it live, and then, we'll see you guys as, remotely, like we did this week. And yeah, you can call in. That's fine. Totally fine. We'll roll with that. How about on the phone? I know I said a lot quickly. Any questions, confusion about next week?
I don't have any. Can you hear me? I never can
Yes.
tell.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I don't have any questions per se, except I'm assuming that Carolyn is coming to Delaware, and I'm just asking the question. I'll be in Charleston, but I could go to Carolyn, and then I will have more IT support, so we potentially could have, you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
We could actually,
Carolyn
or
is
she
not
come,
coming. She's not coming to
okay,
Delaware. So
okay,
she'll be in South Carolina. So if there was a way that the two of you could plan to be in the
yeah,
same room,
definitely.
yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
And, this is Marianne. I think that I love the opportunity to get together with Diane and Cindy on this before next week. So I don't know what the time availability is, but we can work that out after this is over.
Definitely. I agree.
And don't sweat too much the individual development plan or the logic model. You're not getting a pass-fail grade even. It's just, to mentally kind of, get you prepped for the learning that will take place. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, guys. And thanks for
Thank
bearing
you.
with us in all the
Okay.
IT drama. Cindy, you are a champion. You are an IT champion. I
don't
give
know
you a
about that.
9,
Bye.
a 10. All right, bye.
Thank you, Heather.
Bye.
Thank you, Lauren.
All right.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye, Cindy.
I'll be